Peace and respect to you all, and welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions, superstitious thinking, etc. Thank you all for watching this. I suppose I should say please pet the algorithm if you think that what I'm saying is valuable, or if you think it would be valuable to someone else. The only way to get this out here, if it's true, is to pet the algorithm, so please do that. Okay, so recently had a conversation on Flow State's channel, which is mostly human interest stories, but every once in a while. Peace and respect, Christian Carpenter. Hey, it's good to see you today. Peace and respect, Pixie Storms. How are you doing, dear Pixie? On Flow State's channel, and there were 8 people in the room, 7 at certain moments. Wait a second, 9 people in the room, not including myself. At certain moments, 8. And I presented to them what I've nicknamed the Sabbath syllogism. Peace and respect, nerdy rodent. Cheese and disinfect. You're an odd, I would say odd bird is the expression, but you're an odd rat, nerdy rodent. Yes, I pray that everyone's doing very, very well. Oh my goodness, what an honor. Peace and respect, and welcome, Nachikita. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
I'm better than I deserve. What brings you to my little neck of the world?
I just thought I'd stop by and say hello. Just got done with my stream, and then, I'm not quite ready to go to sleep yet. So I thought, hey, let's talk to Demolished Doctrine for a little bit. So that's why I'm here.
Well, that's lovely of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for adding to my experience, whatever you bring. Yeah, I watched a lot of your stream. Interesting gentleman. Can't recall his name, but interesting guy.
Melvin?
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to ring a bell. I'm sure you're right. So, are you familiar with, like, structured argumentation? Like, are you already familiar with what a syllogism is and all that sort of thing?
No, not really. Can you just kind of walk me down the path a little bit? Like, what is syllogism? Syllogism?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Syllogism in the English. And what a syllogism is it's a structured argument where you have 2 premises and then a conclusion. Now, each of the premises need to be true in order for the argument, the syllogism, to be valid. And then the conclusion has to follow the two premises in order for it to be sound. Now, once we establish that a syllogism is both valid and sound, it has to be accepted. That is, it is true.
Okay.
Whether a person likes it or not, it still has to be true. I would give you an example that classically is given for talking about this. First premise: all men are mortal. Now, anyone's welcome to argue with that first premise, or even the second one, which is Socrates is a man. And then anyone's, of course, willing and able, if they're able, to argue with that. And then the conclusion should necessarily follow, and that conclusion is Socrates is mortal. So is that a good example?
Yeah,
for you?
I got you. So, like, the premise is that all men are mortal, and then the second premise is that Socrates is a man, and then so the conclusion is that Socrates is mortal.
Right.
I think I'm following you thus far. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the first thing is true, the second thing is true, and the third thing is necessarily true. Right? That's the idea. So there you go. That's how that works.
Sounds good. So where do we go from here?
Well, we present syllogisms from here, and I have a specific one that I recently did with a crew at Flow State, and it struck me that they didn't know how to argue, and I thought, how sad. These intelligent, obviously highly functioning people able to carry a good conversation just didn't know how to argue with a syllogism, and I thought I should go over what this means, so that it's more public than it is right now. You want to participate in that?
Yeah. I mean, actually, this is my jam. I really like the philosophy and logic and all this kind of stuff. I wouldn't consider myself like logical or whatnot, but like this is good stuff, and obviously when you have like a big panel and you got all kinds of people, you can't assume that people are good at arguing or not. I mean, you're not going to really know until you give them something to bite on, I guess, and you find out that actually maybe some people might not have any teeth.
Well, it seemed that they would have had teeth, if they just understood how to argue with it, So I think it would be beneficial maybe to the general public, and specifically these gentlemen that I interacted and one woman that I interacted with, to go over this. Okay, so let me see. I would bring up a slightly, let's see, share screen and window. And here we go. Let me share this real quick. Okay, you can see this, yes? This
Yep.
other screen, you see it?
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it.
All right, so here's the syllogism written down. It's written a little bit better than I spoke it over there, but just the same. It's the same thing. So here's the first premise. God rests from the finished creation, the Sabbath. Mankind is, second premise, mankind is part of that creation and is not finished until perfected in heaven. Conclusion, God's Sabbath rest begins when mankind is finished in heaven. Okay. So take a look at it. You can read it easily enough, yes?
Yeah. So premise one is God rests from the finished creation, the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
So God rests from the finished creation, the Sabbath. So Sabbath is the resting of God, I guess, right? Once
Mm-hmm.
God has finished creation, then the Sabbath is the rest of God, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the premise two is mankind is part of that creation and is not finished until perfected in heaven. Okay. So mankind is part of that creation. So, but God has finished creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay. So God's Sabbath rest begins when mankind is finished in heaven. Yes, I think this is all true, according to the
Okay.
premises. Yes, I agree.
I think so too. All right, so of course, let me switch this off. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I shouldn't have bothered to save it, but okay. My typing is terrible. Okay. Let me stop that. Alright. I guess there's not a lot of sense in reviewing the video itself now that I'm thinking about it. Peace and respect, James Apperson, and of course, Mac the Human. Welcome. Thank you guys so much. And Von Erich, thank you for stopping by. Okay, so there's another standard one that is flawed that I would review with. It's purposefully flawed. It's designed to be wrong, but it's designed to sound good at the same time. And perhaps you have, and perhaps you haven't heard this. Here's
Maybe
how it
it's
goes.
better to not reveal it, because then maybe I would not have known that it was flawed.
Ooh, yeah, I probably, yeah.
But now
I
that
think
I
it would
do,
be
but
obvious.
okay, but let's see. Let's take a look at it, and then let's see if I would have.
It's still
I
going to
have
be
to try
challenging for you because I'm going to ask you to tell me what's wrong with it.
Okay,
Okay,
let me try.
it'll still be some fun. All all crows are black. First premise. Okay. Second premise: some cows are black. Conclusion: some cows are crows.
Well, obviously the answer is no. All crows are black, and some cows are black. So some cows are crows. Is what I heard, right? Some
Yes.
cows, no, are crows. And the question is, why not? Why are not some? Because they're all crows are black, and some cows are black. So why are not some cows uh, uh, crows? Is
Right.
really the crux of the answer. Because well, just because a cow is black and a crow is black, that doesn't make them each other. I guess that would be my argument, right?
Right. And
Like,
expound on that all you like.
okay, well, let's see. They're different animals entirely, and then blackness is the quality of those animals, but that doesn't make them each other. So we have
That's it.
yeah.
That's perfect. You found it. Black is not what identifies something as a crow.
Yeah, it's a quality of that crow, let's just say, but it's not what makes it a crow.
Right. You found it. That was exactly that's the logical problem with the argument. Yeah.
Sweet.
Wow. Wow, you have a gift for this. Good for you. Let's see what the side chat's doing. Not much of nothing. Okay. Um, so after that was done, I was just going to open up the panel and invite people
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Open up the panel. I'm just here to hang out. I see that you have come over to my channel a few times, so I thought it would be just appropriate for me to say hello to you. And we have spoken a few times in the past. I know
Mm-hmm.
you have come up to the panels on my chat, so I'm just returning the favor. And we've had good
That's
conversations before, so thank you for
that's the
having me.
exact phrase I was going to use. Is thank you for returning the favor. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so is there anything I've ever said to you that you think is maybe bad thinking, or that I couldn't justify any of the claims? Or if you'd like, I would make a claim right now, and we could just go at it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, we can just go at it. I don't have any, how would I say, like, I cannot remember or recall anything that you've said that left any kind of a negative impression.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna have to joggle my memory for that. But so far, as far as I'm concerned, we're cool, and you're a sound of mind as far as I'm concerned. So let's go and try to take a look at a claim and see whether or not it's legitimate.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I have to judge my mind using my mind, and that entire thing is circular. So I'd much rather present things that I think are true to someone else and see if they agree. Peace and respect to B.S. Lewis and Sandy. Yeah, yeah. So okay, I would just assert a claim and see where it goes. Um, which one should I select? I have a lot of these, like the Sabbath syllogism. It's just profound to me that if a person is not indoctrinated in a certain way of thinking, and they approach something in that clean state, they may see things that people don't normally see, and I think that's what happened to me. I was shown things, and I look at them, and they seem to be true. So here's another syllogism. Um, in the story of the Bible, Jesus leads a peculiar life, and that he's the only one that has that peculiar life. And I could go over all the aspects of it if you're not familiar, but most people in this culture, in related cultures, are
Yeah, yeah,
fairly
yeah.
familiar.
I'm
Yeah.
fairly familiar. Yeah.
Okay. Those same aspects are spoken of in the book of Revelation in description of the two witnesses. The conclusion is Jesus is the two witnesses of end times.
Okay, so the premise one is Jesus led a peculiar life, and the premise two
Mm-hmm.
is that those same aspects of that peculiar life is written about in the revelation of the two witnesses, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And thus,
Good so
the
far.
two witness. Okay, so thus the two witnesses is Jesus, or one of the two witnesses is Jesus. Is that the third premise?
That the two witnesses, both of them, are one person, Jesus.
Well, I don't think I would agree with that claim myself.
Okay.
So just because one has led a peculiar life, and then those two witnesses led a peculiar life, like so the commonality is the peculiar life,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you know, uh, so anybody, so it's like saying like anyone who has a peculiar life is Jesus, just because Jesus led a peculiar life, and I don't follow that logic myself. But
Okay.
to unravel that a little bit more, in my opinion, I guess, is that um, you know Jesus is not who he is because of a peculiar life. That is a kind of a life that he has lived, but Jesus is separate in the sense that he is um, how should I say this? Like a prophet, and just because one has a peculiar life doesn't make one a prophet. I don't know. Like that's kind of like where I'm like leaning towards at the moment.
Okay. Let's try to flush some of that out.
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
So the idea isn't that Jesus has just any peculiar life. So not anyone who has a peculiar life, which everyone has a peculiar life, would be Jesus. But instead, they'd have to have certain things that happen with them, certain prophecies that they fulfill in order to be Jesus, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. And those things, someone calculated out the likelihood of Jesus fulfilling the prophecies, even being able to, on purpose, fulfill the prophecies of the Old Testament of the Messiah. And it was a astronomically large number that I don't remember. It's unimportant, but it's a very unlikely occurrence that someone would do all of those certain things in one
Yeah.
person. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay, continue on. I mean, I guess the only thing that I would respond about that is that somebody can say, somebody playing a devil's advocate, say, well, even if it's 1 in a billion chance, like it could have happened or something like that,
Sure.
like, but yeah, it's not an argument. That's not an argument that I would be making, anyways.
Right. The unlikelihood of something doesn't make it not so. That's
Right.
true. Right. Okay. So in the story itself, in an internal critique, the Bible claims that Jesus' life is a one-off, and then it describes those same aspects, responsibilities, and powers in the book of Revelation concerning the two witnesses. So I don't see how it could be both a one-off and happen twice.
Ah, okay. Yeah, but I guess I wasn't aware of that information according to the premises. I'm only going off by the quote unquote peculiar life as
Mm-hmm.
the commonality. So, like, this
Mm-hmm.
is added information to that peculiar life that is
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling prophecy, as an example, and then is basically saying, like, well, how many people can fulfill that prophecy, and then equal that to peculiar life? And I would just say
Mm-hmm.
one, which is Jesus.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. It has to be Jesus. So yeah, so it's not good enough to just have a peculiar life, but have to fulfill the certain aspects. Now, it's hard to write a really good syllogism. It's not an easy thing to do, especially on complex topics. So, I mean, are all my syllogisms like perfect? And what's a perfect syllogism? It contains all the necessary information and no unnecessary information. And that's
Yeah.
difficult to do. And you also want it to be sexy. You want it to be elegant, and you want it to be succinct, and that's not an easy thing to do. And I haven't gone over these 1,000 times as I need to. I just haven't had time for that yet. Hopefully someday I will.
And these are
Um,
like IQ tests, the way I look at them. Like in the
they
IQ
sort of
test, they
are.
have, yeah, they have very similar, like like word, the Wonderlic test. They have these kind of examples, and then you have to kind of come to a conclusion, based on whatever information that's been given to you.
Yes, and I would address Brojo because he brought up an interesting challenge and wrote, Richard, are you taking on a traditional Christian view that Jesus did actually fulfill prophecies in the Old Testament where every Jew would probably disagree and that those checks were taken out? And though I'm not understanding the last part. Can you paraphrase that for us, John? I'd appreciate it. I'm not understanding the last part of that last sentence. Disagree
It's a
in
little
that
bit,
those.
yeah, unclear the way I read it, though too.
I'm just not getting some reference. I don't know what checks we're taking out meant. Okay, maybe he'll
I
clarify
guess the
that for
checks,
us.
the way I would interpret the checks is the actual prophecies. You check it off, like this
Oh,
prophecy happened, you check it off, and that prophecy happened. Those checks is
right.
what I would gather from that.
Well, John, it's an interesting thought. Certainly, assuming Nachikita is right. But that's an external critique that I'm not performing right now. Now, I would welcome to switch to an external critique and talk about things like historicity and whether or not these things are plausible in reality and all that sort of thing. But I'm just working within the whole of the tradition of the Bible itself. I'm not talking only about Tanakh, of course. So it's I mean, you raise a good idea, but that's not really what I'm talking about right now. What we could talk about, of course, you're welcome to come in, John. And then
Uh,
there's the entire problem of, in an external critique, there's the entire problem of the Old Testament was there in the time that the New Testament was written, and they could easily just write things that made Jesus the fulfillment of the. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. So, if I may ask, Richard, I believe that's your name,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, are you a Christian? And if so, what kind of Christian would you consider yourself?
Well, it's an interesting question. Okay, I can find no sect of Christianity to fully agree with. I can find pieces from every sect of Christianity which I'm persuaded are true. Definitionally, a Christian is someone who's doing the best that they can with limited knowledge and experience to follow Christ. So I am literally a Christian who has no church.
Okay. So you label yourself a Christian, but
Mm-hmm.
you do not follow any one sect or denomination.
Yeah, I can't because they always say something that's wrong.
Yeah, this is so you're kind of by yourself in a way.
Yeah, and not that I feel I need to defend that terribly, but every human brain is different and understands things differently. There is no cohesive church in the first place. Actually, there's as many religions as there are religious people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
So I don't feel
I'm
peculiar or special or weird or too fringe for saying, just admitting that I'm a singular person with my own understanding of things.
okay. And may I ask, what does it mean to be a Christian to you?
Um, well, first of all, it's got to be flawed because you'd have to be Christ to understand Christ, right? So,
Okay.
in the best approximation a person can make to follow Christ, that's a Christian.
Okay. Okay. So like like I guess there's a saying that says like aim high if you want to hit the target. I'm sure you've heard that before. So
Sure.
like in that sense, like aiming high is the Christ, and knowing that you will never be able to reach it, like you're gonna hit your mark as like that's kind of the way I look at it though too. Like Christ was a kind of a being that was like like I don't know. Maybe some people could maybe say that they are close to it, but like I'm very far from it. And but I try to uh, move in that direction where is an example, and if, even if I can be like a 10% of Christ, then I can be kind of like somewhat happy with myself. you know.
Well, that's better than being 0%, right?
Well,
So
absolutely, and at least I'm trying to strive for the 11th percentage. I mean, like I'm not sure if I will reach 15% or 20% or 50%, but like it's just like moving in that direction at least, trying.
I can certainly appreciate the sentiment. Certainly, that seems like a good aim. Yeah, but
Okay.
unfortunately, of course, we're all working with whatever brain we have, and we see things that, for this time being, are all subjective, and thereby we can't know the objective to even aim for that. So the best we can do is to aim above it, and when we miss, we don't miss so far away, right? And hopefully that way achieve it. Like saying something like, I want to take the absolute best that the Bible has to portray in the morals of Jesus, or in the stories of the Yellow Emperor, or in the gentle spirit, or whatever expression, and I want to aim for the best of that, the best way I can think of it at all. And then I'm going to achieve better than I normally would have, even if I miss. Something like that, yeah?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a kind of a maybe how would I say this? Like for me, I don't consider myself this religion or that religion, but I have a lot of respect to Jesus, and I don't know if I'm in the. I would consider myself where I believe Jesus is God. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
there, and I know that is one of the kind of the prerequisites for a lot of Christians, so far as the ones that I have spoken to, that there's some like mainstream ones, Jesus died for your sins kind of deal, as well, it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
big within Christianity. So that's why it has always been a little bit difficult for me to label myself as a quote unquote Christian. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
label myself Christian. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, then I think possibly that you just revealed to me I said something poorly to your brain, and I'd like to clarify it. Um, I don't only find truths in the Judaic religions. I find those big, earth-shattering truths throughout all of the ancient religions. Now I think we can easily dismiss things like Jehovah's Witness and scientism and Scientology, and some of those kinds of things that it's just evident, obvious, and we know that some singular person just made that stuff up. You know, so I'm not really interested in those kinds of things, and I'm not really referring to those things when I say ancient religions. But I do find like the epic story of the hero and what the hero must do, and the trials of the hero, and how those trials grow the hero, and how the hero becomes the hero, I think is thematically consistent within all of these ancient expressions.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I keep muting myself because I don't want to cause any kind of a feedback. But yes, absolutely. And the whole idea of myths or like actual stories, it's a story about heroes. Like a hero with 1,000 faces, right? Joseph Campbell. He talks about like we all have a kind of a journey, and a lot of these like hero narratives have a kind of very similar overlapping timeline to them. Like the how they are called to action, and then they go into their adventure, and then they meet a kind of a bottom of some sort, maybe a death, and then it's a resurrection of sort, and then coming back home kind of deal.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I find it interesting that we are now in this time and age doing things like cloning, which is like a literal resurrection, or a literal reincarnation in the flesh. I think that's amazing, or maybe scary, or both.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting times that we're in. I will say that much, and the amount of advance, amount of like progression that we have experienced, like past 50 years is just like a hockey stick. It's just like, I talk about this, in terms of like artificial intelligence and cloning, robotics, and all this kind of stuff. But really, I do believe that we are at a precipice, like I'm talking about humanity wise. And like,
Mm-hmm.
if you just follow the narrative, let's just accept the narrative that's been given to us, of the history that we come from. The 2,000 years ago, Jesus came, and then, the Roman empires came and gone, and the medieval ages, and then the Renaissance, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just assume that all of those things happened. Like most people for like thousands of years, like, let's say we had a 6,000 years of human history. Let's just say,
Mm-hmm.
like with the Egyptians and the Sumerians and all that kind of stuff. Well, 99% of that 60,000 years, we were like on horse and buggies, and still fighting with like swords and arrows. And it's just like the past 100 years, we got airplanes and tanks and guns. And then even if you extrapolate at what happened in the past 100 years, like last 20 years with the computers and artificial intelligence, we're like on a different trajectory. Like where we
Mm-hmm.
are in terms of technological advancement is like, I don't know. It's like it's almost equivalent to like Bitcoin being at like $100,000, and then at the beginning of Bitcoin it was like 0.001 cent. It's like that kind of a disparity.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just you're just evidently right. What do you think the causation?
Demons. If I were, if
You
I
know,
were to be just completely
to
honest
be
with you.
blatantly honest about it, I actually
Yeah.
agree with you. Let me give a for instance. Which is more technologically advanced, a solar panel or a nuclear bomb? Why'd the nuclear bomb come first?
That's a good question, because people want to blow each other up, and that's more of a priority than solar panels.
But there was still plenty of people that were, looking for more. The search for free energy, has been going
Yeah,
on since before that.
yeah. The people who are in power wants to blow everybody up. Uh,
Yeah.
you're talking about the average Joes out there who just want to live a normal life and have free energy, and like we could have floating cars and we could live the Jetson lifestyle right now. Right now, we could have a
Mm-hmm.
Jetson lifestyle, but the powers that be don't want us to have that, and they want us to have all these kind of like dirty old stuff that will poison ourselves and poison humanity, and blow each other up at a whim. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and this just a joke. I really, as far as the Jetson lifestyles, I really don't. People are bad at driving on 2 dimensions. I don't want them driving on 3 dimensions. I really don't.
Yeah, I get you, and I mean that I think there's a little bit of a tongue in cheek on that, but like you don't necessarily. I mean, with the technology that we have, you don't have to drive. Obviously, they already have the technology. They got some kinks to it, but like really, you know, um, yeah, I understand. You don't want, but like we could live another kind of a reality where people are actually, uh, trained in a better way. They're not on like SSRIs and stuff like this. Like, there's not a
Mm,
lot of people who are not really sound of mind. Let's just really call it out for what it is.
sure, sure. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a lot. Yeah. Fast coverage, big topic stuff. throat was getting a bit dry. Okay, so I don't see a way that there could be multiple gods. I don't see how that's possible. I do see a way, peace and respect, Jamie Russell. I do see a way where different cultures, because of standards of value systems and such, and ways of expressing things, would need a different description of the same thing. So much so that I think that one culture doesn't respect and understand enough some distant, very different culture, enough to understand that what's being presented is the same thing, but under a different set of necessary values necessary to that society to explain that thing to them. What do you think of that?
Okay. I think I lost the thread a little bit. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Not to insult you whatsoever, and you may not even need this, but to put it extra simply, if I say as a citizen of the United States that I like cow, that means a certain thing. A person's going to think, oh, he likes beef, hamburgers, leather. He appreciates good wood glue. Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, if I were a Hindi man and I made the same statement, I like cow, that is an entirely different set. Yes. You know, even if I used precisely the same words. So to say the same idea in different culture, you have to use different words. You can't use the same words.
Yeah, and it's very vague, like to say that I like cow anyway, like because sure. Even within the same culture, it could like do you like cows as a pet? Do you like cows to eat, or do you like cows as like a product? You know, like right. Livestock. Yeah, I get that.
Right. Okay, so we'd run into that problem no matter what the topic is, which is why there's translation, not transliteration. I mean, to my mind, saying that the sky is sacred and blue is not cussing. But if you literally transliterate sacre bleu from the French into English, that's what it says. But it's cussing. But you wouldn't know why. You know?
Yeah.
So that sort of problem.
I've heard that because like the French have these like very strong cuss words that is of a Christian, you know, like the like sanctimony type of thing, right? Like sacre bleu. I think like I guess the direct translation is that sky is blue, but isn't that also like a some kind of like a sacrament? Doesn't
it's sacred blue. It's sacred blue sky, referring to heaven.
Yeah.
So it's in English to an American, to a U.S. citizen, I would say, "Oh, heaven above," and it would mean the same thing.
I see.
Right.
Yeah, but
it would have to be completely different words.
Sure.
I'm thoroughly persuaded that that's what happened, that there's a singular source for these stories, that the stories are true, that different cultures don't normally extend themselves, try to learn other cultures, try to understand, and that there is in fact on this earth no expression of a different God, just different expressions of the same God. So not only am I Christian, I consider myself to be of all the Judaic religions, of Aboriginal Australian religion, of all of the ancient religions, because I believe all of them, and I believe they're not arguing with each other.
Yeah. This is yeah, it makes sense, but I guess like, you know, to me anyway, like God is like not definable, you know. It's hard to you can maybe say like there's a distinction between like small g God and a big G God, and then we can like probably like talk about that a little bit, but like basically for me, like when we talk about one God, like unifying God, one God who created all things, Yeah, I would agree. But then again, like people say like Allah instead, or in India they say Brahmin as an example. But they have
Hmm.
the Trimurti, and most everybody has heard these expressions like Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. They're the three faces of God, and thus they call it the Trimurti, like the three faces of God.
Sure.
But then all those three facets of God is actually singular to the idea of the Brahmin, right? Which is maybe equal to Allah, which may equal to quote unquote a Christian Abrahamic God. But there is a kind of a philosophy that is called Advaita, which means non-duality. And non-duality says that the good and the bad actually all belongs to God, right? The positive and the negative all belongs to God. So actually,
Hmm.
God, like in the Taoist idea, it cannot be defined nor contained or described. It is kind of a mystery that way.
And yet I believe that it's true for the reason that, at least for this limited time offer, act now and get a life today, our 120 or less years on this earth, it, it is an environment of both pain and pleasure. But I don't think we can learn empathy for each other and understanding enough that we could maintain an ideal society for all the different variations of what human being is without having first had some experiencing of actual personal suffering. Uh, and you could say something like on the job training is better than book learning on a lot of things, especially on emotional things. You could tell me all day long about some amount of discomfort that you were in because of some kind of injury, and I might sympathize with you, you know, but it doesn't really mean I would empathize. It doesn't, or whichever way those two words go. It doesn't mean I would really deeply understand that, you know, and
Hmm.
without my suffering, I can't understand suffering.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
think I think it is godly to suffer
Well, it's kind of
for
baked
our,
into the cake of living.
sure, sure. Living
This,
is suffering. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can't really separate those ideas apart. Like, so I was thinking about a premise or the syllogism just now. So God is perfect. That's premise one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And premise two, creation is creation, or this reality is a creation of God, right? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is a creation of God, let's just say. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's premise two. So the third is that the reality is perfect because God is perfect.
That's good. No, I think that's inarguable. But the next question I would ask, the next necessary syllogism is, what is it perfect for?
Yes. So let's just assume that that makes sense. That God is perfect, and He created this reality, and thus reality is perfect. Then the question then we should be start asking is like perfect in what way? What does it mean? I guess because is it comprehensible to us in our mortal brain? Because I believe that God is perfect. He's the most perfect being. Let's just say, but how do I start to articulate or to try to argue or disseminate what that perfection is to others? Because then we have to add or put together all things. Like, for example, suffering is bad, right? We don't like suffering, as an example, right? So we try
Okay.
to avoid suffering, right? Like if you give people a choice between pleasure and suffering, most people tend to choose pleasure. Would you agree with that
Sure.
choice? Right?
Absolutely.
But suffering is unavoidable. you know, whether you want to avoid suffering, it happens to every single person, right? So suffering, like we said, is baked into the cake of quote unquote perfect creation. Thus, God intends you to suffer as a part of the creation and being created and being a participant of this creation, and suffering is a kind of like baked into the cake of creation. So you are meant to quote unquote suffer in this reality.
I
Is
totally agree.
There's no flaw in that argument?
I think it's true. I can't find. I don't know of a way to argue it, especially if I took like a biblical stance, as Welcome Seriously Ray points out in Isaiah 45:7. I, the Lord, create both good and evil. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go further then. Okay. So if suffering is unavoidable and it is the saying that which we are here to do, then we should love suffering. We should like
Yes.
suffering.
We should. And now it's against our nature to, and I think here's why. Too much suffering for too long results in the end of a species. It would just kill us. So that's not in our best interest. However, and enough will kill an individual as well. However, a limited amount of suffering to a greater benefit is beneficial. It builds hospitals. It builds emergency vehicles. It builds jobs and industries and all kinds of things that we do experience this. Because we have sympathy, empathy for each other, and we don't personally want to suffer, and we don't want others to suffer. But and this is well, it's not particular only to the text of the Bible. I find it in some other places, which most people wouldn't know those references, and I shouldn't even have said that much. But the story of the fall of Lucifer, well, let's look at it at its in gross anatomy, at its face value. The Bible is claiming that there's this perfect place called heaven. There's an archangel there. The archangel believes something that is not true, that he could have a better situation, and strikes out on his own to make that better situation. Well, that's a bad on heaven. That's a huge failure on the part of heaven. Now, what was it that made Lucifer think that he could do better than the claimed utopia of heaven? But it's not true. Well, he believed something not true. Okay.
Which is that?
Which is that he could do better.
Yes.
Okay, so that's in within an internal critique. It's just not true. He could not do better. Okay, but what you as a governor in heaven should do about that kind of occurrence? Well, I do know one solution. Have people suffer so that they have a comparative. Because if you don't have something to compare, then you can't make a measurement. So to say something like it could be better is beyond actual capacity to judge that.
It's a relative statement, though, too. Better
Right.
is, it's like it's different for different people, right?
Yeah, and we could get into Sam Harris, but I think that the reason for an earth and a reason for the need for the suffering is so that we would have a comparative against a utopian society. At least a very small percentage of us would have that comparative, so we could understand what premium is. Because apparently without a comparative, we can dream up something that can never be, which is what Lucifer did.
Okay.
So, and a lot of typical Judaic religious theists would argue with me this, not all of them, but some would, that there are going to be our offspring. We would continue to make offspring, children, in heaven. And that's how we fill the land of heaven. and the population, which is something about 8 billion right now, all ascended into heaven, would apparently be a very, very small percentage of the population, perhaps 1% or even less eventually. So when I consider a 100 to 1 lives, right, my life of suffering here, no matter how much suffering I might do, could be well spent in benefit of those other 99, or those other 100, I think is the way I said it before.
Okay.
So
Could
I'm
be.
more than
I
willing
mean,
to suffer whatever amount to their benefit. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
no. I mean, and that's great, and that's like very magnanimous of you to do so. Like I think it's a very noble thing to do, to sacrifice one's life for others. But obviously, a lot of people are not on that page. Like we live in a very much YOLO world, and people tend to be quite looking for themselves. They want that high, they want that, they're chasing after this thing or that thing. And that's quite the average. So if you take the average number of people, let's say from this culture to that culture, and then you take 100 or 1,000 like cross cut example of what people are thinking and feeling, they're not, you're in the minority as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's true. At least I don't see a whole lot of examples of people trying to do it. And Brother John wrote, "Sorry, Richard, again you contradict yourself. You say there is all truth in all the religions, all the same, but all the other Christian denominations get it wrong. Why is it to say that the Buddhist..." I'm expecting more. That looks like not the end of... Okay, so to already address how you're poorly thinking, John, there's a big difference between what the practice says and what the practitioner says about the practice. And we can't conflate the two. When I say that they say things that aren't true, I'm not talking about the story, I'm talking about the practitioners. So when I'm asked what church am I in, that's a set of people who are practicing. I can't be part of one. Okay? Which is not the same as saying the story is untrue. I'm not saying some part of the stories are untrue. I think the stories are all the same and all telling the same truth in different ways. However, the practitioners themselves and the traditions therein, often called doctrine, is to be demolished. Which is why I call my channel Demolish Doctrine, not Demolish Bible, not Demolish Quran, not Demolish... No, Demolish Doctrine. So, John, you'd know me long enough, you shouldn't have missed that.
This story about Lucifer and the devil is always very fascinating for me. And, like me thinking and believing that God is omnipotent and omniscient and all this kind of stuff. This and the story of like the creation of like the best of the angels, because that's what was said about Lucifer. He was the best. Yeah, he was the best of the angels, right? And then why did Lucifer, according to the Bible, and I think the Quran has a similar story, he basically refused to serve man, so far as I understand it, right? And then God, and then when Lucifer refused to serve man, like basically Lucifer was saying I'm higher than man. How can I serve a being? It's like me. It's like saying to you, like, okay, go and worship this worm, like and then hold this worm as like a like your is above you, and all your life is actually for this worm, and your life doesn't matter at all. This worm's life is more important than yours, so that's your job. And then you're going to be offended. Maybe not you, but somebody did, right? And so that's the way I think Lucifer saw it. But if God can foresee all of this to happen, then is God like malicious? Is God like not a sadist, but what's the other word? when you enjoy masochist, like is God masochist, and obviously we can't say yes to that. That'd be blaspheming God. But like when you try to follow logically with our puny little human brain, it's hard to make up or down about this whole thing. Like if God told you, okay, Adam, here's the fruit, tree of knowledge. It's right in the middle, but don't eat from it at all. I'm ordering you, but you can do anything else you want. You can eat from other fruit, but not this one. It's like, but why put it there at all? And so you can argue, well, God was testing Adam and Eve to see if they're actually going to obey. But then the devil came and then, convinced Eve that, partaking from the fruit of knowledge is actually a good thing. And then Eve somehow convinced Adam. And some people are arguing, well, actually Adam knew knowingly. Adam knowingly partook because he loved Eve so much, and that's why but he wasn't deceived. He knew he was being deceived, as an example. So it's a lot of confusion, at least in my mind, about what's happening there with that Genesis story, trying to make sense of it.
Well, you brought up a few different topics there, and I'm not sure which one you'd rather
well,
address.
whatever.
But
You bite into whatever you want to bite into. It's a big piece of pizza, and then there's different flavors there. So go ahead and pick up whichever.
Maybe I can do both simultaneously. Okay, so since the beginning of standard ideas or church dogmatic way of thinking of any of this, there have been philosophers who tried to justify certain inconsistencies, right? So when we say something like Eve unwittingly and Adam wittingly ate of the tree of knowledge against divine command theory, because they certainly couldn't have known that what they were about to do was evil because they had no knowledge of good and evil. So they were innocent in that way. It's things written by the early church, by the practitioners, but it's all predicated on the already standing tradition of that church that they came up with that explanation for some certain inconsistency, right?
Yes.
Or do you disagree? Okay. All right. So I don't see any reason to accept their presuppositions in the first place, which is all that I talk about. After all, as you pointed out, midway through, at least hinted at it, we would have no Bible if knowledge of good and evil, which if that's the purpose of the Bible is to point out what's good and evil, we would have no Bible if it were only evil to point out what is good and evil. Thereby, it must be true that knowing the difference between good and evil is not only part of being an adult, but is beneficial to us generally and is a good thing. It's a good thing to know the difference between good and evil. For instance, if I didn't know that it was evil to do something harmful to another human, I might just do that every whip stitch. Well, how does a race survive like that? They couldn't. So it's obviously to our benefit that we know the difference. Okay, so the existence of the tree itself, that is a good thing to exist. For it to be in proximity to those who can use it, that is also a good thing. For them to use of it and learn the difference is also a good thing. Okay, so where's the falling out? Well, the falling out is in what the first people who studied these things thought it meant, because they assumed divine command theory. But I would present a different view. If I say to you, using exactly the same phrase, thou shalt not. If I said, Nachikita, thou shalt not ever kick me off your channel. What I'm saying there is that you're able to do a thing, and that for whatever justification, you should not do it. Okay? However, if I said, Nachikita, thou shalt not kick me off my channel. Now, I did not deny you the right to do something. I was not trying to compel you to do or not do something. I was saying you don't have control over my channel. So that was a declaration of inability. Now, in the text of the story, although people would have preferred it to be referring to divine command theory, I believe it was a statement of truth. Thou shalt not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lest ye die. That is to say, that you cannot understand what good and evil are, and when you do, that old man, that old person, now knowing the difference, that old person is gone and a new person replaces them. So yes, if you even touch of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you will instantly die, which is a good thing.
Okay. So why is there kind of an understanding among a lot of Christians is that like God is like ordering like we can both agree that it is good to know the difference between good and evil. I wholeheartedly agree. We agree that the good and evil, but why make it like why like present it as if it's a negative thing to like have partaken this knowledge of good and evil? You know, like kind of like Adam and Eve is like feeling like, okay, like what's this whole aspect of like Satan came and then, you know, convinced Eve to partake in this fruit, and you know that was a bad thing and is a sinful thing to do, and God has ordered Adam and Eve to not to do it, and then Satan exists because of God, right? God created the angels, and then Satan, you know, out of his quote unquote free will, refused God and thought that he could do better. So Satan exists, and God knew that all this is going to happen. How could God not know any of this to happen? So in a way, you know what I'm kind of where I'm going with this is that God is like has not only allowed this situation to occur, but has manipulated this situation to occur.
Well, within omniscience, it would have to be manipulated. I agree with you there. Now,
Yes.
I don't think that's the case because I think there's no such claim. And again, that's just another tradition. And if I had to approximate the best I could as to why they think it's divine command theory instead of a declaration of an ultimate truth saying that you simply cannot do this thing until I just give it to you, and evidenced within the story itself when the angels of God at the end of the story say, man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. Well, okay, well that can't be a bad thing to become as God. So they actually verify it within the story that the statement was true, that that's what knowing good and evil does for a person. So the only approximation I can make is actually daddy issues. They needed it to be divine command theory, and so they assumed it was. But it makes the story inconsistent within itself and contradictory. In fact, I could go over it step by step, but essentially, God set them up for a fall. Then knowing they would fall, they did fall, and then He blamed them. That's called victim blaming. And then He pretends to be the hero to a situation that He set up. Right. By presenting a resolution to it, which is the sacrifice of the Christ Jesus, which totally would not have been necessary had He not.
Right.
So what? He's creating a problem and fixing it? What's that called? The something dialectic? This is insanity.
Right.
It's certainly not a God. Why would a God be playing such games?
Well, maybe a God, but not the God. You know?
It wouldn't. I couldn't worship that. You know,
Right.
This thing is dishonest. This thing is manipulative. It's creating problems just to solve them. What is it? Bored? It's got nothing better to do.
Well, I mean that's the puzzling aspect about this whole thing, I guess, for some people. It's just because you know, like if you know who claimed that Lucifer was the best of the angels? Like, who would know?
It's an internal
that?
claim. Yeah.
You know, and then
Yeah,
so
that- Sorry, go ahead.
no, just to finish that thought, like, okay, let's just assume that is the truth. But then, like, if he became Satan, the best of the angels, is that the role that he was destined to play? I mean, I would say that I mean, like really, like my philosophy is that there is no real arm wrestle between God and the devil. I mean, there's no like struggle there. Like if God wants to snap his finger and say, "Be gone, you demons and the devil," then they would all disappear. But they are, or if you believe that they exist, as I do, then God is allowing them to be. So they must have a role in this world, right?
Hmm. Oh, yeah, apparently to cause suffering, yes, and I think that's necessary. We need it.
Right. Yeah. So that being said, that it must be a very difficult and complex role, and only the best of the angels can, you know, uh, can be qualified to do that. And I guess that's where Lucifer comes in. I guess that's
It's an
only
interesting
conclusion that I can.
perspective.
Yeah, that's the only conclusion that I can come to.
Yeah, you'd have to be the best of the angels to be the Satan, I guess.
Right. Because the Satan is like again like how would God be able to test you to know that you are genuinely good or bad without all this kind of like okay, God is already all knowing and all this kind of stuff. Let's just accept the fact that's the case. So like if we follow that logic, right, the way we just did, then it's a God that is kind of sadistic in a way, like of like, okay, I know that you're gonna fuck up. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to fuck up. I'm sorry to use those words,
Oh,
so I
it's fine.
apologize, but
No, go ahead.
so like, then I'm gonna, and then you're going to do it because I know exactly what you're gonna do. Now I'm gonna damn you to hell for eternity for you having done so. You know what I mean? It's like it's like you can't get out of this kind of deal. Like you were destined to have it happen, or maybe God is in fact loving, as I believe that God is, and maybe God does have His own rationale about how things are going to work, and maybe God believes that everybody should have a chance at going to heaven or going to hell, and He's going to use the devil to and the demons to tempt you, and then see if you going to be tempted, and then if so, okay, the whole world is there for that, but then while you chase after quote unquote pleasure and all that kind of stuff, you are essentially condemning yourself. So God is not really responsible for you anymore because you were given all the opportunity to correct the course, but you didn't. So who can you blame other than yourself at that moment?
Well, I would agree to the extent that people damn themselves. That no God would damn any of His creation, of course. To rebuke and reprove, I am trying to compel to your. I'm trying to compel your intellect. I'm trying to. When I say the following, please understand I'm not being in the least sarcastic. Do you see that in your statement? I'll read it. We would say instead that God wanted to teach us good and evil on His own terms and not your own or our own, would have been consistent. Our own terms. Eve was essentially the first atheist or moral relativist. The second half was completely unnecessary to your point. But to the first half of it, what you just described was divine command theory, that might makes right. Now, if you really believed that, and you had a woman in your life, and you saw a man who was stronger, taller, more wealthy, more intelligent, more able to reproduce, and would be a better mate to your woman than you are. If you really believed divine command theory like that, you would voluntarily give up your woman to another man. So I don't believe you believe that. I think that you're special pleading and God is the exception. And God, because God is all powerful in your view, that when He does something, it is automatically correct. But this has nothing to do with morality, where the story is about good and evil, questions of morality. So you seem to have missed the point of the story entirely. Sorry, I don't mean that to be a conversation killer.
No, it's
Um,
fine. But yes, I do need to get up in about 6 hours, 5.5 hours. But I will hang out for a little bit longer just to kind of wrap up our discussion. And I just appreciate you having me up here, Richard.
Well, it's been
And
fun.
yeah,
I
it's good. I
appreciate you
think it's good.
dropping by. Drop by anytime.
Well, thank you. And, I think it's good to just kind of, explore with our minds, and I think logic is an important thing. I really do. And, these logical fallacies that we can actually, we're all blind to some form of dissonance, so this is something that I think each individual can kind of draw that out within us because we do have blind spots and I do too. And I
Sure,
think it's
we all
good to
do.
kind of, have a little bit of a mirror or reflection with other people who can perhaps, just point that out, for each other so that we can actually be sharper, steel sharpens steel type of deal, right? So, yeah, and I think more people actually, thinking about these kind of things. This is philosophy to me, and it's kind of missing from the modern. Um, it's kind of like people are living a life of that without any kind of examination. Like it's good to examine what it is that we think and what it is that we believe and why we do so, and see if there's any kind of fallacies there, and then maybe that will change the direction that we're going in life though too. Who knows? I'm not here to convince anybody that my way is the right way, and I'm always trying to learn something new, but like I think it's important to have these type of discussions, so thank you.
Thank you. And I see you making that effort all the time. So congratulations to your consistency. That because of that evidence, I believe you do believe what you are saying. There's no doubt in my mind. And thank you so much for your time, Notch.
All right, well, you have a good rest of the day, I guess. So I'm assuming it's over there. It's 3:30 in the morning where I'm at, so I do need to get up for another interview tomorrow. So I will talk to you soon, Richard, and
Well, I hope
thank you
they
again.
purchase you.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure if that. I'm not sure what that means. Who will purchase
Well,
me?
when we're going for an interview of whatever kind, we're selling the product, and the product is ourselves. I hope they buy you.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking about my channel, right? And then tomorrow I will have a flat earther guy on. We'll talk about that. So, anyways, I will see you around, Richard, and we'll talk soon. Okay, take care.
Peace.
Have a yeah.
Rebuke and reprove. Unlike myself on your channel, you are welcome to come in and speak to me. And frankly, I don't think it's fair that I get to use nuance of tonality and meter within my sentences verbally to express myself, and you are limited to a very two-dimensional typing and limited number of characters. That's not fair to you. So if you want to have an actual discussion, you should just hit the link and come in, man. Because you trying to compete with me when I'm not limited to in those ways. It's not fair to you. So be fair to you by coming in. It's all speculation at the end of the day, says Seriously Ray. We don't know things objectively, if that's your point. You're right. But it's never an evil to say, here is all of the evidence that we have at this time. Let's look at the evidence we have. And let's ask ourselves the following question. What is the most rational thing to believe right now? What's the most rational thing? I'll give you a for instance. Nearly endless ancient religious stories talk about intelligent beings able to interact with physical reality and interact with us coming down out of the sky. They give them different labels, But dude, that's an alien. I don't care what anybody says. The Bible's describing aliens. Quite literally. Definitionally aliens. So there's one such thing. Now, does a Christian want me to say, want to hear me say something like, Archangel Michael is an alien? No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't really appreciate that. But it's definitionally true. I mean, did Archangel Michael ever interact with reality? Yeah. Have a mind? Yep. Descend from the heavens? Yep. Did he ever live here? Was this ever his house? Did he ever, like, I don't know, visited a couple times or whatever, but live here? Oh, hell no. Doesn't live here. He's supposed to be alive today anyway. If he lives here, where is he? I don't see the guy. Do you know Archangel Michael? You don't? Okay, well, he must be a visitor then. Probably robots in Ezekiel. No, this is actually really good, DeFreak. This is really good. I mean, you could use the word robot. But we know of things that have no life in them, and yet they move. Right? That's an example of, like, we would call that a robot. Right? And a lot of Christians don't seem to notice or pay special attention to. Peace and respect, Ewan. If I'm saying like, if you want to write the pronunciation of that in English, I will try to do the best that I can, but for now. And I apologize if it was just totally wrong. That Ezekiel troubles himself to say, and Christians greatly ignore, the following phrase: as to the living creatures. So apparently Ezekiel could understand that what he was seeing was differentiated in that it was not alive. Because then he describes the angels in that scene and says that they're alive. So he says these wheel within a wheel thing, rushing air movement sounds, going from point A to point B via flight. He says they're not alive. Okay, so what do we call a thing that moves that's not alive? Well, a robot's a fine label. I like the freak's label. That's fine. But you might be surprised how many people think that that's not a robot or, you know, some kind of aircraft or something like that. But it's definitely not alive. He says so. Unless, of course, you just want to throw away things that are in the Bible, which anyone's welcome to. But heck, if you're going to do that, write your own. Just ex nihilo, make your own Bible. My mic is distorted. Oh, crap. In what way? Well, DeFreak, you're right. It sounds fuzzy. Okay, thank you, Halcyonic. I'm going to have to, like, use a program and try to figure out what's wrong. Some stuff got bumped. It's been weird ever since. It used to be really good. It's the same system. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead, rebuke and reprove, and no one else apparently is coming in. Although I made a special invite to Jill, just because I want to be using the name I originally learned. Because the wheels are symbols. Brother man. Do you know what faces are on the wheels in the book of Ezekiel? Recite it if you can. Eagle, lion, bull, Now they're stated in that order, and they're always stated in that order. Perhaps you did or did not notice. The Achaia, the eagle, Leo, the lion, Taurus, the bull, Aquarius, the man. Evenly spaced in the zodiac. And before you think that you think what I'm saying, I'll just say it. The zodiac was named after parts of heaven. Chew on that. Yes, they're symbols of what? Pourquoi? For why? It illustrates the omnipresence and omniscience of God. According to you, everything would. See, so you can have no comparative. And if a person has no comparative, how can they make an assertion? For instance, if a cell was made by God, and you can tell because of its complexity. Complexity compared to what? Because according to you, everything was made by God. And show me a simple thing. And if you have no comparative, how can you make such an assertion? It's just silly. I'll probably start up another stream sometime this evening. Give a few hours. I've sat still long enough. It's all I can stand. Jill, you should just come on. It's not fair to you for you to stay inside chat and try to express all these things. It's unjust. I don't want to be unjust. Are you going to come in? You going to come in? Or can you only do side chat right now? If you can only do side chat, I'm going to start up another stream after a while. Feel free to come in then. To everyone, thank you for adding to my experience. Thank you. Special thanks to Nachikita, for coming in and having a conversation. By the way, I can have good conversation with anyone who's willing. All you have to be is willing to have a good conversation. My gosh, can you stop misquoting me? First of all, I've been over this with you. I don't know how many times, Assembly. I just don't know how many times. It makes me think you're just a troll. Okay? That's what you make me think. And actually, it makes me feel sorry for you. I'm not making that up. I'm genuinely just starting to feel sorry for you. Because you have nothing better to do than to just troll someone. Which makes me think you have a very, very, very sad life. That's what it makes me think. Now, if you were being accurate at all, then I wouldn't think that. But you're not even being accurate. Here's reality, Assembly. When someone says could have been, that is not the same as they saying was. See, could have been is not was. You understand the difference between could have been and was? Now here's the real problem. Here's the real problem. I misunderstood something. Now, I know that I misunderstood the following. That the court case was actually completed. That was the impression I got, and I thought I was free to talk about whatever I thought. I was wrong about that. The court case was not over. It was still ongoing. Right? And I should not have spoken. I should not. But when Tom Rabbit had inside information from the female involved and spoke of it freely, I made a bad assumption. I made a huge error right in that moment. And I thought it must be done or Tom Rabbit wouldn't be saying these things. I was wrong. See, Tom Rabbit in kind of a street smart kind of way is smarter than me. And he got me. He totally got me. He got me to divulge things that I'd promised I would not say until it was over. He got me to divulge things. All right? Everything that I'd said, aside from just talking about what was logically plausible, you're right, I did not have good judgment in that moment. You're right. I admit that. I just did admit that. Everything that I was saying right there, aside from saying what was plausible, that is to say, experimentation. It could be this, it could be that. The other stuff was based on a private conversation that I'd had with somebody else. Okay? I spoke out of turn. I feel horrible about that. I believe it hurt people. I believe I was wrong. Okay? Rebuke and reprove, go reread it. Ezekiel says right after the description of the wheel within a wheel, as to the living creatures, differentiating. Go read it again. Look, I still think he's innocent even though he's convicted. Do you understand that he took a plea bargain? Assembly, do you know what a plea bargain is? That's where you admit to guilt whether you're guilty or not to get a reduced sentence. He took a plea bargain. I don't know, and you don't know, and the court don't know if he's guilty. He simply said he's guilty. Are you saying it's impossible for him to have lied about his own guilt? If you can show me that he couldn't have lied about his own guilt, I'll take that as a valid argument. I don't think you can show he wasn't lying. Would that make him a liar in that situation? Yes. If he lied about his own guilt, he lied in that situation. Totally true. Not sure that I would not have lied in that same situation. Because there was a disparity. There was a lot of difference between the amount of time he would have to serve. Years of difference. Not months. Years of difference. Assembly of God, I'm not sure that you would not have pled guilty. You might have pled guilty too, even though you would know that you hadn't done such a thing. Peace and respect, brother. Let's farm. Haven't seen you in a minute. Thanks for dropping by. I'm glad I hung on for a minute for you to drop by. It's nice to see you. Unfortunately, I'm ending the show, and I'm going to go smoke a cigarette and have a coffee and, take care of physical things. Assembly of God, do you think 12 years is a long sentence? Do you know how long he was going to have to serve if he was found guilty while claiming to have been, not guilty? Do you know how much longer it would have been? Do you have that in your data bank of statistics? Would you have admitted guilt for one less year? Would you have admitted guilt for 2 less years in prison? How about 3? Would you have done it for 3? How about 5? Because everyone's got a turning point, man. I still think he's innocent because he was having sex with adults at the time. And that doesn't make damn sense. I still think he's innocent. Because there were adult women saying they were having sex with him at the time. And people don't diddle kids when they're having normal sex. It's just statistically almost impossible. Look, assembly, if you think the person is guilty, you're a pedo defender, right? If you think they're innocent, you're not a pedo defender. You're a normal person defender. Now, I may be wrong about, any number of given things, right? I'm not defending a pedo. I'm defending someone I think is innocent. There's a big difference there, man. What's a fallacy? You said something, and maybe you could be right. What's a fallacy? You do want to extend the argument or engage in the argument, or else you wouldn't have written what you wrote. I wrote it just above that. Hold on a second. The two are not mutually exclusive. That is a fallacy. I don't want to extend the argument. No, you didn't make anything clear, Sandy. I need you to make it obviously clear. Talk to me like I'm 5. Going to ask if you had enough distraction. Go for a walk now. Grins. I should say I shuffle, or should I say I shuffle? The two are not mutually exclusive. What two are not mutually exclusive, Sandy? I was personally assaulted by a man as a child, by a man who had sex with adult women. Yes. I didn't say that never happens. Do you think I said that never happens? Okay, and you're writing it again. That does happen. Yes, that does happen. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Because I went and looked it up. It was in offenders who were convicted, the likelihood of that, they were both taking advantage of the immature and simultaneously having mature relationships. It was something extremely low, of offenders, 1.2%. Look, Sandy, I understand how statistics work. There are extreme outliers. It does happen. And no, I'm not trying to make you a statistic. However, statistics, the numbers cannot lie. They're not able to misrepresent. And I didn't say for that reason no one ever did that. What I did say is the likelihood of anyone doing that is very, very, very low. Which means the likelihood that I meet someone who did that is very, very, very low. Look, don't try to make me insensitive. And if you think I'm being insensitive about this, you might be more of a victim than you think. Okay? I'm not... Look at you defending yourself. Oh, I'm discounting your... Sandy, go away. Sandy, go away. Don't bother to come back. You're not being an adult. I don't need non-adults on my channel. Go away. Don't come back. You're being overly defensive when I'm not attacking you. Look, I'm very sorry you had a bad experience. You were wronged. It was not your fault at all. You have no culpability and no liability. But if you can't be an adult, go away, don't come back. Geez, I wasn't even talking about you. Not everything's about you, Sandy. What a terrible note to end a stream. My gosh. There'll be no pedophiles in heaven. Peace and respect, Ashra's Orchard. What's going on? People who claim to be adults not acting like adults. That's what's going on. Just frustrates the crap out of me. I had to invite someone to leave because they took something that wasn't about them, made it about them, and then attacked me with it. Saying things like, I discounted their experience. No, I didn't. I did no such thing. I'm sorry, Sandy, that you are this hurt. I'm personally sorry that you are this hurt. I'd like to point out that I didn't do it. I'm not the one that hurt you. You have no reason to attack me. I'm going to close this out. Until such time that we can all be together and fully adults in heaven. And I look forward to that day. Peace and respect to you all. Might see you later today.